Have you ever been betrayed, disrespected, or deeply hurt by someone you trusted? Your first instinct might be to strike back, to prove a point, or to make them feel the same pain they caused you. But what if I told you that real power isn't found in revenge, confrontation, or anger? What if the most powerful response is the one that leaves your enemies confused, irrelevant, and beneath your level? The ancient Stoics knew a secret, one that can transform how you handle pain and betrayal. They didn't fight fire with fire. They didn't seek payback. Instead, they mastered something far more lasting, themselves. Revenge in their eyes was never about the other person. It was about rising above, evolving, and becoming untouchable. So, instead of letting your pain destroy you, what if you used it to build a life so strong and fulfilling that those who wronged you no longer mattered? In this video, we'll uncover the ultimate Stoic path to revenge, one that isn't loud or destructive, but quiet, calm, and unstoppable. And it all begins with the most powerful tool you have, your ability to remain completely unmoved. Not because you're weak, but because you've grown strong enough to no longer need a reaction. That brings us to the first and most important principle. Number 1. Indifference is the ultimate power. When someone hurts you, the natural reaction is to lash out, to make them feel what they made you feel. But what if your silence said more than any words ever could? What if the true power wasn't in shouting back, but in not needing to speak at all? The ancient Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." These aren't just poetic words, they're a blueprint for how to live above the chaos others try to pull you into. We live in a world where conflict is often worn as a badge of honor. People shout over each other trying to prove who's right, who's stronger, who has the last word. But the Stoics believed real strength isn't proven in noise, it's revealed in silence. When you are unmoved by the actions of those who seek to provoke you, you don't just show strength, you become untouchable. Think about that. A version of you so grounded, so centered, that no insult, betrayal, or attack can shake your spirit. That's not weakness, that's mastery. Marcus didn't just write those words from a peaceful place. He ruled an empire under constant threat. Yet even amid betrayal and war, he turned inward. He trained his mind to stay still, unshaken, disciplined. When others stooped low, he stood tall. And that's the path we're called to follow. The path of not mirroring the injury, but transcending it. When you choose not to react to someone's cruelty, it confuses them. It takes away their power. Why? Because they feed on your response. They want your outrage, your explanation, your breakdown. When you don't give it to them, when you stay calm and carry on, they are forced to sit with their own actions. And more often than not, that silence is louder than 1,000 comebacks. Picture it. Someone lies about you, spreads rumors, maybe even publicly disrespects you. You feel the fire building inside. Every part of you wants to fight back. But you pause. You breathe. And you remember that their actions do not define your character, your response does. So, you say nothing. You let them scream into the void while you build a life so full of peace, progress, and purpose that their noise fades into the background. This isn't easy. Indifference isn't passive. It's a daily practice. It's waking up and choosing not to let someone else's behavior dictate your inner state. It's seeing someone who tried to hurt you and feeling nothing, not hatred, not even pity, just stillness. That kind of emotional self-discipline doesn't just happen overnight. It's forged in moments of temptation when you want to respond, but choose instead to rise. And let's be honest, your silence will say more than your words ever could. When you stop reacting, people notice. When you stop engaging in petty drama, others look up to you. And more importantly, you reclaim your peace. You take back your time, your thoughts, your energy. The Stoics would often talk about the idea of the inner citadel, a fortress of the mind that no one could breach. That's what you're building every time you choose indifference. You're telling the world, I am not ruled by your opinions. I am not shaken by your judgment. I am free. Now, some people hear the word indifference and think it means apathy. That's not it. Stoic indifference is not about not caring about anything. It's about caring deeply about the right things, about your values, your integrity, your mission. It's about refusing to waste your soul on those who try to drag you down. So the next time someone wrongs you, ask yourself, what would Marcus do? Would he storm into a room demanding an apology? Or would he sit calmly with his journal, reminding himself that his power lies in his response, not in revenge? Let them gossip. Let them hate. Let them misunderstand you. Because the more you grow, the less you have to explain yourself. And the less you react, the more you protect what truly matters, your peace. Indifference is not silence because you have nothing to say. It's silence because you have nothing to prove. It is the rejection of drama, the refusal to stoop to another's level, and the declaration that you are in control, not just of your actions, but of your emotions. It is saying, I will not be a puppet pulled by the strings of anger. I will not dance to the tune of someone else's bitterness. I will rise, and I will rise quietly. In the end, they may never understand why you didn't respond. They may spin their own stories, but it won't matter, because you won't be there to hear it. You'll be too busy living a life that speaks for itself. Let your indifference be your sword and your shield. Let your silence echo through the lives of those who tried to break you, and let them watch from the shadows as you move forward untouched, unstoppable, and free. Number 2, success is the greatest silence. There's a kind of silence that echoes louder than any insult, a kind of growth that speaks for itself. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to post about it. You don't need to scream, "Look at me now." Because when you truly commit to evolving, to building a life of purpose and discipline, your success becomes self-evident, and that's the kind of silence the ancient Stoics understood as the most powerful form of revenge. When someone hurts you, your first instinct might be to make them see what they lost. You want them to regret it, to realize how wrong they were. But the truth is, if you're still focused on them, then you're still giving them space in your mind. And that's exactly what Stoicism warns against. The moment you take that pain and use it to fuel your growth, you've already begun to win. Not by seeking validation, but by shifting your focus entirely away from the person who wronged you and toward the person you're becoming. Success isn't about proving someone wrong. It's about proving to yourself that no one can break what you've built within. The Stoic doesn't thrive in spite of others. The Stoic thrives because they've learned to detach from the opinions, praise, and criticism of others entirely. Epictetus didn't teach us to argue with people who underestimated us. He taught us to work so diligently on ourselves that their opinions became meaningless. So ask yourself, what's louder? A life lived in revenge or a life lived in excellence? Which leaves a deeper mark? A comeback made out of anger or a future built out of peace? When you succeed quietly, something remarkable happens. You stop craving recognition. You stop needing their apology, their validation, or their approval. You no longer care whether they see your progress or not, and in that moment, your freedom is complete. Because they expected you to stumble, they expected you to collapse, but instead you rose calmly, consistently, and on your own terms. Now imagine the person who once belittled you, who said you'd never make it, who left you when you were at your lowest. Imagine them hearing your name not because you shouted it, but because your results whispered it into every room. Imagine them sitting with the realization that they no longer affect you, that your happiness, your peace, your entire world is moved forward without them. That is power. But this is not about revenge in the traditional sense. Stoic revenge is not reactive. It's not emotional. It doesn't seek to crush or humiliate the other person. It seeks only to master the self, to become so strong internally that nothing external can shake you. So disciplined that your work becomes sacred. So focused that your success feels like a byproduct of inner peace, not ego. You don't need to announce your glow-up. You don't need to respond with bitterness. In fact, the more you stay quiet and consistent, the more undeniable your transformation becomes. Not because others finally see your worth, but because you finally do. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet reminded himself constantly, "It is not the man who shouts loudest who is strong, but the one who remains unmoved." Strength isn't volume, it's clarity. It's walking into a room full of noise and knowing you don't need to say a word, because your actions already speak for you. So keep going, keep rising. While others stay busy with opinions, stay busy with purpose. While they argue, build. While they mock, create. Let their noise fade into the distance as you craft a life so rooted in meaning that no attack can shake it. And when they finally look your way, when they see what you've become, they won't be able to say a word. Because success, when it's real, when it's honest, when it's rooted in discipline and detachment, leaves no space for arguments. It silences every critic, every betrayal, every doubter. Not with anger, not with vengeance, but with quiet, undeniable excellence. That's Stoic revenge. That's success without noise. That's silence at its most powerful. Number 3. Control what you can, ignore what you can't. Life has a way of testing you through the things you can't control. A friend turns into a stranger. A partner walks away without closure. A boss overlooks your effort. Suddenly everything feels like it's slipping from your hands. The more you try to hold on, the more exhausted and defeated you become. But what if the exhaustion isn't coming from the situation, but from the fight to control it? The Stoics believed that the moment you stop resisting what's beyond your reach, you begin to reclaim your peace. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Epictetus taught that some things are up to us, and some things are not. That single idea could transform your entire life if you let it. But it's not enough to understand it. You have to live it. You have to look at the chaos around you and say, this is not mine to carry. You have to stop trying to rewrite conversations that already happened. You have to stop hoping that someone else will behave differently. And instead you turn inward. You sharpen your focus. You take ownership of the only thing that has ever truly been yours. Your response. You may not be able to stop people from mistreating you, but you can stop them from turning you bitter. You may not be able to change how someone left, but you can choose not to let it harden your heart. Every moment spent dwelling on what you can't change is a moment stolen from what you can build. Let's be honest, there is a kind of pain that comes not from what happened, but from the illusion that you could have controlled it. That if you had just said something different, done something better, or held on a little tighter, maybe it wouldn't have ended the way it did. But the Stoics didn't believe in clinging to what-ifs. They believed in facing what is. And in doing so, they gained clarity, peace, and strength that couldn't be shaken by outside events. Imagine two people in a storm. One curses the wind, screams at the sky, and demands that the rain stop falling. The other tightens their cloak, adjusts their footing, and keeps walking. Same storm, different mindset. Which one do you think reaches their destination? You don't need to fight every battle. You don't need to respond to every insult. You don't need to win every argument. That's not your job. Your job is to maintain your character. Your job is to stay aligned with your values. Your job is to preserve your energy and use it for your purpose, not for their chaos. The world may never be fair. People may never change. But none of that can stop you from growing. None of it can stop you from choosing courage over resentment, clarity over confusion, and action over complaint. So the next time you're pulled into frustration over something outside your control, pause. Ask yourself, is this something I can influence? Or is this something I need to release? That one question can save you from hours of anxiety, days of distraction, and even years of resentment. Because once you learn to separate what's yours from what isn't, you'll never go back. You'll see arguments for what they are traps. You'll see other people's behavior as information, not invitations to react. You'll stop obsessing over why someone didn't treat you better, and start focusing on how you'll treat yourself going forward. The Stoics weren't detached because they didn't care. They were detached because they cared about the right things, about virtue, about discipline, about inner peace. And so they trained themselves to walk away from what wasn't theirs to control, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. And you can too. So release the urge to control everything. Let go of needing everyone to understand you. Let go of the past you can't change and the future you can't predict. Hold on only to what strengthens you. Your attitude, your choices, your mindset, your discipline. The rest? Let it fall away. Because true freedom begins the moment you stop trying to manage the external world and start mastering your internal one. Number 4. Master your emotions, master your life. Anger, resentment, jealousy, bitterness. These emotions come rushing in when someone hurts us. They take over our thoughts, poison our perspective, and convince us that we're doing something powerful by holding on to them. But the truth is, those emotions don't protect you. They imprison you. And the Stoics knew this better than anyone. They believed that the person who controls their emotions is stronger than the person who conquers cities, because the battlefield of life isn't out there, it's inside of you. When someone wrongs you, the easiest thing in the world is to react, to shout, to break, to let your pain spill into everything you touch. But where does that get you? Temporary satisfaction followed by lasting regret. The Stoics weren't interested in temporary wins. They were after lasting peace. And that kind of peace only comes when you stop being a servant to your emotions and become their master instead. Anger, when unchecked, becomes a chain. It keeps you tied to the very person or situation you're trying to move on from. Every time you replay that argument in your head, every time you imagine what you should have said, you give them free rent in your mind. You become trapped, not by them, but by your own emotional reaction. But what happens when you pause? When you feel the anger rise and choose not to act on it? That's where true power begins. Not the kind of power that dominates others, but the kind that sets you free. Because the moment you stop reacting out of impulse, you begin to live from intention, and that is the foundation of Stoic strength. Picture a flame. If you feed it, it grows, it rages, it consumes everything. That's your anger. But if you stop feeding it, if you sit still, if you breathe, if you let the moment pass, the flame dies down, the heat fades, and suddenly you're no longer burned by your own fire. This is why the Stoics train themselves constantly, not to suppress their feelings, but to discipline their reactions. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." He didn't deny the existence of emotion. He just refused to be ruled by it. And you must do the same. Because emotional control isn't about being cold, it's about being clear. When someone disrespects you, you don't need to retaliate to restore your worth. When life tests you, you don't need to collapse to prove you're hurting. True emotional mastery is the ability to feel everything fully, but respond with wisdom, not wounds. Think about the people who hurt you. Are they worth carrying in your heart every day? Are they worth allowing into your future through the doorway of your reactions? Probably not. And yet, without emotional control, you keep inviting them in, through anger, through revenge, through pain. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine feeling calm when they try to provoke you. Imagine choosing peace over reaction. Not because you've become numb, but because you've become untouchable. Imagine no longer letting your emotions dictate your day, your decisions, or your destiny. That's what Stoic philosophy gives you. Not a numb heart, but a disciplined one. Not a quiet life, but a focused one. And when you reach that place, when you stop reacting and start responding, you take your life back. So, the next time you feel that surge of rage, that sting of betrayal, or that sharp pang of sadness, pause, breathe, remember, you are not the emotion. You are the one witnessing it. You are not the chaos, you are the calm beneath it. And the more you return to that calm, the more you expand your power. Because in the end, it's not what happens to you that defines your strength. It's how you handle it. Master your emotions, and you'll master your life. Number 5, live so well they become irrelevant. What if the people who hurt you no longer mattered, not because they changed, not because they apologized, but because you built a life so full, so rich, so meaningful that they simply faded into the background? That's the Stoic ideal. Not revenge, not vindication, just irrelevance. Because the most powerful transformation is the one where you stop asking, "Why did they do this to me?" and start declaring they no longer have power here. The person who betrayed you may still be out there, repeating their patterns, dragging others into their chaos. But you're different. You chose to break the cycle. You chose to stop spinning in circles trying to understand what cannot be understood, and instead decided to build. You made their betrayal a turning point, not a stopping point. Living well isn't about flaunting success or broadcasting your glow-up to prove something. That's ego. Living well, in the Stoic sense, means cultivating a life so rooted in peace, purpose, and character that you have no time, space, or energy left for bitterness. They expected you to crumble. They wanted to watch you fall apart. But instead you chose to rise with grace, with quiet strength, and without them. Imagine being so focused on your mission, your growth, and your healing that when their name comes up you feel nothing. No tension, no pain, just neutrality. That's not coldness, that's freedom. That's the result of choosing your future over your past. You're no longer replaying the argument. You're no longer stalking their social media. You're not wondering if they miss you, if they feel guilty, or if they ever think about what they did. Because your life is so full of meaning, of discipline, of forward momentum, that those questions no longer fit inside your story. The Stoics didn't believe in dragging old battles into new days. They believed in now. They believed in living a life guided by virtue, wisdom, and clarity, not vengeance or regret. Seneca said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." And few things waste more life than holding on to people who let us go a long time ago. So you let them go not with spite, but with silence. Not because you've forgotten, but because you've outgrown. They were part of your story, yes, but they are not your identity. You are not what they did to you. You are what you chose to do with it. Every time you pursue your purpose, every time you show up for yourself, every time you heal a little more, you make them smaller in your story. You push them further into the past until eventually they're just a lesson, a page in a chapter you've already closed. And this is what they didn't expect. They expected you to stay stuck. No, to keep needing them, explaining yourself, defending your worth. But you moved on. Not with a dramatic exit or a loud declaration, but with quiet progress. The kind they can't argue with. The kind that makes their actions irrelevant because you're too busy living a life that works. When you wake up at peace, when your goals start becoming your reality, when your heart is no longer heavy, that's the real victory. Not that they hurt you, but that they didn't get to keep you broken. Not that they left, but that you kept growing anyway. That's the power of Stoic living. Not to erase the pain, but to transcend it. So live. Live in such a way that you don't have to say a word. Let your consistency speak for you. Let your joy speak for you. Let your peace speak for you. And let the people who tried to tear you down realize far too late that they no longer matter. Not because you hate them, but because you're free. Number 6. Your peace is their defeat. At the end of every storm, there's a moment of stillness, a moment when the winds settle, the noise fades, and everything stands silent. That stillness isn't just the absence of conflict. It's the presence of clarity. It's the presence of power. And in the Stoic mind, that's where the real battle is won. Not in victory over others, but in complete command over yourself. Because the greatest revenge, the final, most complete triumph, is peace. When someone betrays you, disrespects you, or tries to tear you down, what they truly seek is not just to hurt you, it's to disturb you. They want your spirit unsettled, your mind scattered, your energy misdirected. They want you to live in reaction. But when you refuse, when you sit in the center of the chaos and remain calm, they're left with nothing. Their weapon, which was your reaction, becomes useless. That's why the Stoics saw peace not as weakness, but as power refined. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire on earth, yet in his writings he didn't obsess over power, politics, or enemies. He focused on one thing above all else, mastering the self. And through that mastery he found peace, unshakable, private, earned. That kind of peace doesn't arrive by accident. It's built through practice. It's forged every time you choose to walk away instead of argue. Every time you let go of bitterness and choose discipline. Every time you face pain not with vengeance, but with reflection. That's how peace is made, not through the world changing, but through you, choosing to stop letting the world dictate your emotions. And here's the truth most people never realize. The more at peace you become, the more untouchable you are. You can't be manipulated because you no longer seek validation. You can't be baited because you're not addicted to being right. You can't be shaken because your foundation is built from within. Think about that. What if you reached a point where, no matter what someone said about you, it didn't stick? What if their absence didn't create a void, but a space you filled with meaning? What if their opinion no longer pierced your identity because your sense of self came from something deeper, something untouchable? That's not a fantasy, that's the Stoic path. And it begins the moment you realize that your healing, your growth, your joy, they are all acts of quiet defiance. Every time you choose peace, you're rejecting their control. Every time you choose self-respect over retaliation, you're rising above their world. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with quiet certainty. And that silence, that stillness, it haunts them, because they expected to see you spiral. They expected anger, desperation, a need for closure, but instead they find distance, stillness, calm. And in that moment, the power they thought they held slips through their fingers like dust. But remember, this isn't about them. That's the real twist. The Stoic doesn't pursue peace as a way to defeat others. The Stoic pursues peace because it is the highest form of freedom. It is the quiet crown worn by those who no longer need anything from the outside world to feel whole on the inside. Peace means you no longer carry resentment, not because they deserve forgiveness, but because you deserve freedom. Peace means you no longer define your future through the lens of your pain, It means you wake up in the morning with purpose, not burden. It means your energy flows into creation, not reaction. Let others chase revenge. Let them gossip, manipulate, compete. Let them waste years locked in emotional wars. You don't need to fight to win. All you need to do is heal, to grow, to live, and to do it so well that their presence, their opinions, their absence, even their memory has no place in your world anymore. That is Stoic revenge. That is your final triumph. Not with fire, but with stillness. Not with words, but with discipline. Not with hatred, but with indifference. Because when you've truly found peace, there's nothing left to prove. And when there's nothing left to prove, there's nothing they can take. And that, my friend, is when you've already won. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where someone tried to hurt you emotionally, mentally, maybe even spiritually, and instead of reacting, you chose peace? Or maybe you're in that moment right now, struggling with whether to fight back or walk away. What did you do? What helped you rise above? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's turn this space into a place of strength, a place where wisdom wins, and where silence is not weakness but discipline. If this message resonated with you, if you found even one moment of clarity or strength here, do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell, because the world needs more people choosing self-mastery over self-destruction. And trust me, what's coming next will only take you deeper into the philosophy that can reshape your life. Stay focused, stay grounded, stay stoic.